Okay, guys, so here we are again. Today we are looking at chapter 7.1. Okay, we are looking at Japan's defeat in the Pacific Theater in World War II. So, as usual, before we begin, the usual reminders, make sure you have your handouts, make sure you have a worksheet. Remember, don't just copy and paste. Listen, process. Okay, try to summarize. It is the summarizing that helps you to take home what you need to. Okay, make sure that you have your writing materials, that you've slept enough. Please don't be doing this at 2 a.m. in the morning. Okay, now you should have read the textbook, especially the section on Japanese mistakes. You don't have to read the whole thing at once, but you should read the the subtopic in which we are going to go through for this lesson. Okay, then after that, of course, you should go and fill up your notes. As far as possible, do it in your own words. Okay, of course, sometimes in my slides or my notes, you might come across some new vocabulary. Now, it is perfectly fine to use the new vocabulary, but I want you to be able to use it knowingly. Okay, go and find out the meaning of the word, how to use the word. Okay, if not, what's going to happen is that you're going to end up writing these words in essays that you don't have any idea how to use, which is not going to be good. Okay, so let's go. So today what we are looking at, we have already done this. We have talked about economic and military power. Why am I emphasizing this? Because remember, we were talking about making a comparative argument. Okay, and remember, we are talking about how Japan lost the war. Japan lost the war means the USA beat Japan because of two things. Because of one, economic strength, two, military strength. Therefore, it is only logical that when we are looking at Japanese mistakes, it's going to be about economic and military. How they couldn't keep up with the USA. Okay, so just think about it. What the US was strong at, that's what we want to look at when we look at the Japanese disadvantages. Again, this is the map. Okay, the island of the Solomon Islands are over here on the bottom right corner. Down here, we have Coral Sea. We have the Battle of Coral Sea. Somewhere over here, we have Pearl Harbor, and we know somewhere here is Midway. Not to scale, just remember. Okay, we'll talk about this map more, but it's useful to know what the situation looks like. I know we will never ever test you on something like, where is draw the 5 different countries, 5 different countries in Southeast Asia, but it's useful to have an idea of how the story progresses. Okay, so basically the Japanese are going southwards. Okay, so this is what we're going to look at. There are two main points. Japan's rapid advance into Southeast Asia, and overextension. This is an important concept. Later we're going to talk about it. And of course also how they lost the military battles that we've already talked about. Now, why is it split up this way? Because this is essentially an economic point. Okay, we're going to talk about how this expands into Japanese economic weakness. Okay, so this is how we are going to look at it. A, economic, B, military. Okay, now you will see as we look at this set of notes, oh my goodness, again, there's a typo here. This is the N. Okay, what you will see is that the points that are on the slide, which are also the points on your notes, seem very skimpy. Why? This is deliberately designed in a way so that when you look at a point, you don't just start memorizing, you start asking yourself, what is the big deal? Okay, so let's have a look. Let me break it down for you. This is how we look at a point. Okay, we know that the Japanese situation, the context of Japan is that they have limited resources. What does this mean if they have limited resources? It means they have less material, right? Less material for what? For war. Okay, therefore, since they have less material for war, what is the effect? That means they cannot fight a sustained war. Now, this is already an economic disadvantage, right? In terms of the raw amount of resources, they have less than the USA. Okay, compared to the USA, they have a logistical disadvantage, right? So here, because of their limited resources, they're forced into two things. Okay, one, it really means that they are not going to beat the US in a war of numbers. Secondly, they cannot fight a sustained war. Therefore, there is a need to fight a swift war. Remember, the Japanese wanted to launch a knockout blow. Okay, so why they don't want to go fast? The idea is that since I only have enough resources for 2 years of fighting, I will fight as hard and as fast as possible so that I can secure all my gains. Okay. So if we look at the map and you look at the time, you see that Southeast Asia was seized by mid-1942. They only took 6 months. Okay. And it was very, very fast. It was very decisive. Now, what is the problem with this? Okay, we are going to expand on it later. Okay, and we also know that there was a lack of Allied resistance. Why? Because of the situation in Europe, right? The decision of the Americans was to focus on Europe first, okay, along with the rest of the allies, okay? So what is happening is that Japan wants to expand so fast and so quickly to get all the areas they want. So basically what its gains are is basically we're talking about the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. Okay, basically the whole of Southeast Asia, the map that we saw just now. Okay, and what do I mean by this defensive perimeter? Basically, if let me show you, let me draw. Hey, okay, if this is your perimeter, what Japan wants to do is to set up defenses, okay, so that nothing can come in. Okay, perimeter, math, okay, defense. Basically, they want to defend this area. Okay. So that's the situation so far. They have to move very quickly. Okay, therefore, once they secure what they want, they will defend it so that they can consolidate their gains. Okay. So we already know that this happened. Okay. What is the situation? This concerns the Japanese rapid advance. Now, why is it overextended? Okay, let me explain what it means by the Japanese forces were stretched thinly and why was it porous. Okay, porous here, we are not talking about like osmosis. We're talking about porous. It allows passage, right? Okay, so that is to say things can come in, things can go out. So when we talk about that, that is in terms of defense. Let me explain. Now, if you are the Japanese, okay, at first you have 100 soldiers, okay, and you only have a small piece of land, okay, maybe this is 10 meters square, okay. What you have, it means that you have 10 soldiers per unit area per 1 meter square. Right? Means your defense is very strong because you have so-called 10 soldiers per territory. Okay. However, because the Japanese advance so fast, okay, swift advance, they now have 100 meters square, which means now they only have, for every piece of land they only have one soldier. What this means is that you have far less soldiers to defend. You have the same amount of soldiers, but you have more territory. What this means is that you have less soldiers per unit area, which means your defense becomes more porous. Why? Because 10 soldiers per meter area. Okay, so this is, shall we say, this is a denser kind of defense, right? It's harder to break through. It's like if we are playing basketball, okay, and we are playing 10 on 1. There is no way where I can score. However, if it changed the situation and now we are playing 1 on 1, well, there's no way you're going to stop me, right? Because your defense is now more porous. Okay, that is what I mean. Okay, so think about it. Japan was basically a victim of its own success. Okay, because the defense perimeter was porous, it means that what is the implication? They are vulnerable to counterattack. Okay, specifically the American counterattack. Okay, so don't just say the defense perimeter was porous. You must tell me. Remember, we're talking about why Japan lost the war, right? Therefore, because they're vulnerable to counterattack, what is the effect? US can take advantage. Okay, and therefore win the war. Okay, we're going to talk more about that. Okay, so my point here, I want you to remember that you need to keep making the connections. Okay. So essentially that was a resource problem, and now we're looking at the military defeat. Oh my goodness, I need to redo the slides. Okay, now we have already talked about Coral Sea and Midway. Okay, here we're talking about Japanese losses. Okay, and we also talk about pilots and aircraft carriers. We've talked about this before. Now, but what I want to say is that this is how you can phrase it. Sometimes we get confused between Japanese losses versus American strength, right? American might. Now, your topic sentences will be different based on what is the point you're trying to make. If you're trying to say that the Japanese lost because of American strength, then you must talk about it. You must talk about the example based on American might. But here, if you want to talk about why Japan lost, it is because they were unable to win certain key victories. Okay. So now, since the first 2 points are already done, I want to talk about this island hopping strategy, which is related to what we were looking at by the porous defensive perimeter earlier on. Okay, island hopping strategy is basically, if you just look at the name, this is an island and this is another island, this is an island. Basically, just go from island to island. Okay, what is the point of this? Okay, let's have a look at the map. Okay, yellow means controlled by Japan. Okay, green refers to what the Allied troops were doing. Okay. Now, follow my annotation, please. This is the target. Now, imagine we are the allies. Okay, we are allies. Okay, and I want to get to Japan because I want to stop them, right? Now, if I look at the whole map, there's a lot of yellow. Does it mean that I must go and fight every single thing? I must defeat all the Japanese before I can end the war? No. Okay, which is why if you look at the map of the allies, what they do is that they move, then they move, then they move, then they move. Okay, basically, that is what they wanted to do. Okay, you will see that this entire area, okay, was not touched by the allies during the counterattack. Why? Because what this does is that the allies are taking the fastest and most efficient route. Because they want to defeat Japan. And what happens to all these troops on this side is that they cannot mount any effective military action. Why? Because the allies are not going there. You can't fight an enemy if he's not there. Okay, so what the allies did was that they cut them off, rendering their troops ineffective. Okay. Furthermore, the question becomes, how come the allies were able to just break through the Japanese so quickly? How come they can just move boom, 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 boom all the way until Japan? Okay, they didn't attack Japan. Okay, they launched the nuclear bombs. So we'll talk about that later. It's because of the porous defensive perimeter. Okay. So this is the final analysis. There are two main points that we want to talk about. One, they are spread out too thinly. Okay. So this is the porous defensive perimeter. Secondly, they cannot sustain war production. Why? Because they have less resources. Okay, they have a logistical disadvantage. So the final point we see military and logistical disadvantage. Logistical, you can talk about resources. You also can talk about manpower. Okay, here military disadvantage, we want to talk about loss of key battles. And when we look at point 3, which is the most important point, basically this is the summary, right? This is the key reason. Compared to the allies, okay, the Japanese just couldn't keep up. This is why they lost World War II. Okay, so that is the summary. Remember, it is USA versus Japan, and to win the war, you need two things, right? You need a strong economy, and you need a strong military, right? You need the economy to equip a military to keep going to replace your losses, okay? And you need a strong military to win the fight, okay? So what we see now is that USA is strong, military also strong. But Japan, economic not so strong. Military was spread out very thinly. Therefore, the US obviously enjoys certain advantages, and that is why they win. Okay, so this is where we will stop. The next the next subtopic we'll look at will be the atomic bomb and the role of other global circumstances. Okay.